Welcome back to the Nick Taylor Horror Show. DJ Dodd is a Philadelphia-based producer of over 20 feature films, and he's also produced and developed television content for many major cable networks, including Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet, Food Network, Travel Channel, National Geographic, The History Channel, and Bloomberg, among many others. In this wide-ranging conversation with DJ, we get into his backstory, his mentorship relationship with David Foster, his approach to casting major celebrities, and insights on how he's able to manage such an enormous amount of projects. Tons of insight here. DJ really is a guy who walks the walk as far as producing and just hustling. I was super inspired speaking with him and think you will be as well. Without further ado, here is DJ Dodd. So I would love to get into your kind of origin story as a producer, because anybody who looks on your IMDb page, you have like 5 projects in pre-production, you have a bunch in post, you've already done over 20 films. I mean, you've done a hell of a lot. Could you talk about how you got into this business?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So like I started out actually as a film major. I went to Drexel for undergrad, started as a film major, kind of got cold feet because we were learning more. I didn't realize I necessarily wanted to be a producer. We were learning more about, cameras and directing. And I was like, this isn't what I thought this was going to be. This isn't what I want to do. So I switched to business, got my degree in business, and was like, still had that itch to really make, movies have been my passion since I was a kid. And I've always wanted to make movies. I've been obsessed with movies forever. Decided that I would try my hand at film school if I, got into the, right program. So I decided to, I narrowed it down based on cost, accessibility, location, a lot of different things. Found that Chapman was the place I wanted to go, applied there, luckily got in. So that took me out to LA for a couple of years, and where I sort of, learned producing, logistics, everything from creative producing to, sales, distribution, everything. And while I was there, I always kind of go back to the story, and I credit this one thing that happened in a class. A guest speaker came in that sort of I feel like really jump started me, and might be the reason why I have any kind of semblance of a career at this point. But we had it was in one of my first producing classes in my first year in grad school, and we had an agent from Paradigm come in. And he kind of told us, his story and gave us his spiel. And, there's 10 or 12 grad student producers in the class. And, he goes, look, like I went to Pepperdine, and when I graduated, I had no idea what the hell I was going to do. And I graduated, and I sat around, and my parents finally kicked me out of their basement and told me to go get a job, and I just didn't know what to do. And I became an agent and, kind of got a job in the mailroom and worked my way up. But he's like, you guys are here for 2 years. You're full-time students, you're grad students. You guys are in your 20s. This is, you know what you want to do. Mm-hmm. You want to be producers so much so that you got into this program. You're spending a lot of money to be here. So go fucking be producers. Go find material that you can option. Go talk to writers. Get a script, find talent and develop it, and use this 2 years to build a portfolio and go actually put projects together, and then come out and have, take meetings and have projects. And I was like, this guy's right. And I spent literally the next 2 years just trying to figure that out. And by the end of grad school, I had, a handful of unscripted TV show pitches that I was pitching around. I had taken some pitch meetings at a handful of production companies, Discovery Studios, and some others. I had met with, financiers. I developed a scripted project that I had set up with a Canadian partner that was going to bring some financing, and I had some talent attached to that, and it didn't end up going anywhere. But that was sort of my final thesis project, for my master's degree. But that's really I feel like what jump started me, because I saw, over the next 2 years, a lot of people were going through school and doing what they, what was required of them. But I was spending all my free time just cold emailing people and trying to make contacts and meeting people in the industry.
Yeah.
And before I graduated, I ended up, I had a job. Like I said, I'm from the Philly area originally, like Amish country actually is where I grew up, like outside of Philly. And I had an idea for an Amish TV show. And I wrote up a treatment over my Christmas break of my second year of grad school. And I started pitching it out to people. And that's what led me to a meeting at Discovery Studios. I ended up pitching it in a cold email. Mm-hmm. I went to CAA on IMDb Pro, looked at the looked at the alternative television agents, looked who they repped, went to those people, found their email addresses, found their production company, started emailing people. I did that for William Morris, CAA, ICA, all the top agencies that repped, executive producers in the unscripted space. And I ended up getting an email back from one of them saying, how did you hear about me? And I was like, what? And he's like, I have 2 Amish shows with Discovery and TLC. And he offered me a job as an associate producer, which turned into 2 years of working on Breaking Amish and then Amish Mafia, 2 of the highest rated series on those networks.
Wow.
Ever. And I guess I got to come at that point, I got to come home and I worked in, and I was able to do that and kind of hone my TV development skills, and then, continued working in TV development while, feature films were always my passion.
Yeah.
And developing, still developing feature films and that kind of thing, but allowing sort of the TV stuff to pay the bills, and then, trying to work on getting film projects off the ground. And so, that's sort of how I got in the business. And I will say it's a little, disconnected. While I was in grad school, I did have an internship that turned into a job that was working with a legend producer named David Foster.
Oh yeah.
And he actually passed away last year, or during the pandemic, within the last year and a half. But I mean, this guy, his first 2 films were The Getaway and McCabe and Mrs. Miller. And then, he produced The Thing, The River Wild, Mask of Zorro. I mean, the list goes on. He's really a legend in the industry. He had a deal at one of the studios forever. His son Greg Foster ended up running IMAX for like 15 years. So anyway, I learned a lot from him. While I was working for him, we did kind of the ill-conceived thing. Nobody really knows what it was back in 2011. Was it a remake? Was it a reboot? A remake?
Oh yeah,
full, really bad marketing. But yeah, we did that for Universal, which was cool. And when we did that, like they were really marketing it. And I remember going to Halloween Horror Nights, and they had one of like the horror mazes was for The Thing, which was awesome. And I was like,
oh wow,
worked on this movie, like, and I'm in the maze. It was super cool. But and we were doing a Short Circuit reboot we were working on at the time as well. That never happened and went through a lot of different writers.
Yeah, Pixar picked that up. It's called WALL-E.
Yeah, well, yeah, right, exactly. That was with at the time, the Weinsteins. We were developing that with them. So, but yeah, so working with him, it was just, he was sort of in the twilight of his career, but, he was just one of those old school, like, original Hollywood producers. Yeah. Yeah. That, he just, like, when he walked into a room, he owned it and it was just awesome to watch him work, just how he would, just the command he had of his craft, and I learned a ton from him.
Yeah. Do you know who Jerry Weintraub is or was?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever see his documentary or read his autobiography?
No.
So good. It's one of the best books on life in general, but also film producing I've ever seen. He was one of those larger than life, like Hollywood moguls who just was so charismatic. Yeah. And he would walk into a room and he would like light it on fire. Yeah. And you would totally dig the documentary. It's really good.
I have to check that out.
And the
I
book,
aspire to be like that one day, but
yeah.
that's tough.
Yeah, no, it takes a while. I don't think he got there until he was in his really got there until he was in his 50s. He did music first, and then he got in. But he was repping huge people, like he repped Elvis, and then he repped Sinatra, and then he got into films, and then he made his way into doing the Ocean's movies, which really he started. Actually, one of his first movies was The Karate Kid. Yeah, he saw like a news article, and then commissioned a screenplay, and I'll skip it a jump later. Pop culture is made, and now we have Cobra Kai. So yeah,
thank God for Cobra Kai. We do have Cobra Kai.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I mean, the thing that I'm really attaching to in your story is that I feel like there's this perpetual notion of being discovered in Hollywood, and a lot of would-be filmmakers hope to be discovered. Meanwhile, you're not even out of film school, and you are banging on doors, and you're cold calling your ass off, and that's basically what got you in the door. It sounds like not waiting for an opportunity, but just power of numbers, constantly, persistently getting in touch with people, coming up with ideas, and just really hustling, man. I mean, it's rare to hear that. So, yeah.
Yeah, the best, like I said, man, the best advice and the best advice I ever got, the best advice I could give to someone is what that agent at Paradigm, Bill Douglas, I don't know if he wants me to say his name or not, but I don't know even know if he's still an agent or not. That's the best advice I ever got. And I took to it, and I was like, you know what, I'm spending a lot of money to be here, and I got to make this worth my while. And, and luckily it worked out. Like I could have sent 1,000 emails. I sent 1,000 emails. I mean, I definitely did over the course of time. I could actually go back into my old Gmail account probably and see how many I sent. But if I hadn't sent that one email to that one person, like I may not have gotten my foot in the door at all.
Yeah. I feel like it's the kind of thing where you send out 1,000 emails and one of them comes back and may or may not lead to something. It's such a numbers game for sure. Yeah. But then there's also finessing, like you want to be persistent. You want to be the squeaky wheel, but you don't want to be annoying. You don't want people to like decide not to work with you because you're a pain in the ass. It's a tricky thing, but I feel like that razor's edge is what separates the people who make it from those who don't.
Yeah, it is. It's a very tricky thing because you're right. Like if you are that pain, it's like, oh my God, this guy again. Like I'm getting another email, and I'm sure I did that at certain points. You know what I mean? Like I sent an email, and then I didn't hear back from this person, so let me follow up. And, it's like, so I always try to also like, because I think about those that year or so that I spent sending out my form email with like my pitch and like who I am and all that kind of stuff. I always try to respond to people that like, if I get emails like that, I always just try to respond to people, because I think like it really sucks when you sit there for 4 hours. I mean, my weekends and evenings, might sit there for a few hours sending emails and not get one response. And like that sucks. But
well, that's nice of you to pay it forward like that.
I mean, it's, I just hopefully it at least like keeps those people, hopefully they're not as discouraged. They get some responses. Yeah. If I can help people, I do. But if I can't, I still try to, just say, hey, nice to meet you. Like, keep me updated.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, clearly you're working a lot of movies and you've worked with a lot of major stars. I'm wondering, is there any sort of filmmaking model that you try to abide by that you or Future Proof does? Is there any sort of consistent model?
I mean, I think like a lot of the way that I've put, my films together are through pre-sales, minimum guarantees. I sort of use a similar structure. Equity can be tough, if you get the right names, equity can be safe. If there are a lot of people that make, movies at budgets that they shouldn't be made at with no stars, and then equity gets lost. And, everybody is hoping and wants to get their film into, Sundance or South by or Tribeca or whatever. But it's, even if you could make the greatest movie in the world, but a lot of it is just political. There's only so many slots, and they go to friends or friends of friends or family or, previous directors who've had a film there. So it's political. So I learned that, and I try to, for me, the safest form of financing is sort of putting a project together with the cast that makes sense, going to distributors, sales agents, getting, what they call minimum guarantees, which you probably know what this is. Putting the financing together that way, and then.
Well, for those listening who might not be initiated, how do you describe an MG, a minimum guarantee?
Yeah, so an MG, a minimum guarantee, is basically a payment on delivery for a feature film. So it's sort of a pre-buy. You go to a distributor, you say, I have this script, this director, this cast, how much will you give me for it? And they say, okay, upon delivery, we'll give you $500,000 for this for North American rights. So they'll take, the US and Canada and maybe some other English-speaking territories. And then you can take that piece of paper, which is a guarantee of payment when you deliver the movie, and take it to a bank or another financier, or at that point you could take it to an equity investor and say, hey, like, I have this guarantee that I'm going to get paid when I make this movie, so could you give me money against this? And it's just a safer bet because that money's coming in.
Yeah.
You're not gambling on the thought of maybe I'll get into South by and I'll sell it for $6 million, and
right.
And then that doesn't happen, and then you're trying to figure out how to, recoup anything.
Right. So how do you describe what a producer does? I know it's a matter of wearing a lot of different hats. There's a lot of different parts of it, but on the most basic level, what is your description of what a producer does or should do?
Well, I mean, it's such a broad term, and I think in general, like, my thought of the producer is really just the person who is sort of the driving force behind any project, and that could be in a lot of different ways. It could be the person who controls the material. You're the person who reads this book or this article or the short story, and you're like, this needs to be a movie, and you go get in touch with the author and you option it and you control the material. Mm-hmm. And then you partner with somebody else who may know an actor who would be great, or a director, and they sort of start putting the package together. That's a producer. You could put the whole thing together. I mean, there are producers out there, like you mentioned, like a Jerry Weintraub, or any David Foster. I mean, any of these guys that they find a book and they put the whole thing together. They call up the cast or the agencies and put the package together, go get the financing. They're on set. They're seeing the project all the way through to post, supervising post. Making sure that signing off on all the crew, really everything, finding the distribution, the sales, and then at that point delivering the film. Mm-hmm. Really, it's just overseeing the whole process. And it's sort of like, the director is sort of the person that, if a movie's great or if a movie sucks, the director has to own that. Yeah. It's not really on the producer. Whereas, but if the movie is, if the movie's nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture, the producer is the one who wins that. The producer's the top boss. Yep. Which is sort of good and bad. It's I've been on both sides of it. I've made bad movies, and every producer has. And like, it's good to not have to take the brunt of that and be like, be sort of the face of like,
goddamn director.
I mean, I don't blame the director either, but I'm sure that's got to suck. Like, yeah. But then it also does suck when you make a good movie and then the director's getting all of the praise. But like, that's how it is. That's what we signed up for.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
So, yeah.
I feel like one of the other major roles as a producer is just being the perpetual problem fixer, because things always go wrong either on set or in production or pre-production or whatever the case may be. And it's usually the job of someone like you to solve it through, cunning street smarts or whatever the case may be. Were there any notable stories where you really had to overcome some insane piece of adversity just through either sheer will or any of those other sort of producer abilities?
Yeah, I mean yes. I mean, the answer is yes, and like you said, I mean, we're always kind of we're managing expectations, we're managing a lot of different personalities, from crew to talent. to financiers, to the distributors, to the director, writer, making sure that, everyone's happy all the time. People aren't walking off set, all of these different things. I think that the one thing that sort of comes to my mind is I had a film that we had a window to make, based on the director's schedule. The financier, basically, we were talking to the financier for months, like over the summer, and the financier greenlights the film at the end of August. He's like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'll make the movie. And we had to start shooting at the end of September.
Okay.
We didn't have cast, we didn't have locations, we didn't have anything. And we cast up this entire film. The movie's called Last Call. IFC picked it up and came out beginning of the pandemic. But we ended up casting, Jeremy Piven, Taryn Manning, Bruce Dern, Jack McGee, and putting together Jamie Kennedy, putting together a really nice cast for what I thought in a matter of 2 weeks, and really jump-started getting this thing to go, because we had to start shooting. And it was sort of this thing where, like, I didn't want to go until I knew that we had the cast, to make sense. Cause I don't ever want to put the money in any kind of risk, or the way that I think it would be at a risk without the cast that I feel like justifies the budget and so on. So, we did kind of, that was sort of a miracle. Like, okay, fine, we'll do the movie. Let me know what you need. And then it's the clock's on, and we had to start shooting this thing. We had to start production within 4 weeks.
Wow.
And we put the whole thing together and made a decent film, that IFC ended up picking up, and,
Yeah. Yeah, the cast for that movie is really interesting, and something I've noticed from a lot of your movies is you have a lot of really interesting actors, not necessarily always blockbuster kind of people, but people who you see and you're like, what? Yeah, it's great to see Jeremy Piven again. How come he hasn't been in more movies? Why don't we see enough of him? He was so great in Entourage or whatever. And Taryn Manning, who I'm a huge Sons of Anarchy fan, and it was great to see her in another movie. I mean, there's a lot of these stars that are super recognizable. Frank Grillo is another one. I'll watch that guy read a phone book. He's so good. But what is your approach to casting?
My approach to casting, for the most part, is based on what I think will trigger the financing, but also in terms of what I think will work creatively.
Yeah.
I'm big on cast, for the most part for my films, because the market gets saturated really, really fast. The market's always saturated. So in movies without cast, it's just hard for them to find their footing, in the marketplace. And I've kind of learned that. And, so I'm always trying to, to put a name or two in my projects. But at the same time, it has to make sense. And like you said, I mean, Frank, done a couple of movies with Frank. He's amazing. He's an amazing actor, amazing talent. Jeremy's an amazing talent.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's right place, right time. Kind of the story behind, Jeremy Piven in Last Call. It was, one of my producing partners on the film. He had done a few movies with Taryn, so he's friends with her, and he texted her and said, "Hey, I'm making this movie. We're starting soon. Are you available? Would you want to do it?" We have to go. So she read the script and liked it and said, "I'll do it." And then, looped us in with her agent. She had new representation. So, we're negotiating the deal, and the agent comes over and says, "Hey, we just signed Jeremy Piven. We like the project, would you consider him for the lead?" And we're like, "It's Jeremy fucking Piven. Like, of course we're going to, we love him." So Jeremy read the script and met with the director and agreed to do it. And we kind of lucked into it that way. And sometimes that happens. Like I happened another time, I did a movie called Warning Shot, which was like a small contained thriller. And we got David Spade, and the same kind of thing happened. We'd gone out to CA to another sort of, we were looking at, to your point of sort of interesting choices, like a comedic actor in a dramatic role and sort of a, a thriller role. He plays kind of like a pseudo gangster, kind of a bad guy. And we were looking at a comedian, just someone a little outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And, we had our eye on someone. They passed, didn't work out. But then the agent said, hey, Spade might want to do this. He's looking for something dramatic, and passed the script to him. He loved it and was like, okay, I'll do it. And, did it for, a lot less than what he typically gets, So a lot of it's that. A lot of it's just like good material.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you have crap material, if David Spade reads a script, he's probably not going to do it. If Jeremy Piven reads a script, like he's, may not do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of it. Like knowing your materials is solid, and that you can attract good actors.
Yeah.
And another thing that I use too, like just being honest, Bruce Dern. I put Bruce Dern in all my movies for the most part, and in a lot of my films. I probably put him in five films.
That's awesome.
And Bruce loves to work. Bruce is obvious. I mean, he's a legend. He's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Incredible. Everyone wants to work with Bruce Dern.
Yeah.
Everyone loves him. And, it's like, that was part of it too. It's like, Jeremy's like, I get to work with Bruce Dern.
Mm.
Taryn, who's in Bruce Dern? Okay, I'll do this. David Spade, it was the same thing. Bruce Dern's going to do this? Okay, must be good. Bruce is gonna do it.
Oh, man, Bruce is the ace in your pocket.
He has been.
He's making such a renaissance, man. I'm loving seeing him all over the place. He was in a great movie a couple of years ago called Freaks. Not Todd Browning's, obviously, but he was so fantastic. But Emile Hirsch was in that too.
Emile Hirsch. No, I know. Yeah, I know that movie. It's good, really good.
Yeah,
really good movie.
Yeah, but no, I'm that's awesome that you work so much with him. I love that he's making such a renaissance right now. Yeah,
agreed.
Last few questions here. Sure. What are some of the things you wish you knew in the very beginning approaching this industry that either took years to learn or were learned through really difficult lessons about filmmaking or the business itself?
Couple of things. I would say, kind of goes back to my sort of, the original advice I got and what I've tried to always pass on to people, anybody who asks. Don't be afraid to approach people that you think are unapproachable. Don't feel like this actor or that actor isn't gettable for your project. Mm-hmm. Now, by that, I don't mean, you're going to go to the agent and say, I don't have any money, but here's my script. And can you please ask, Mr. DiCaprio to do my movie? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you have the financing, a lot of times producers and filmmakers, they'll have money for a project and, they won't always, I always kind of overshoot. And I think that's why I've gotten some good cast, because I'll go after people. And I've even had casting directors, and I don't use casting directors much anymore for this reason, because they don't want to, they're like, you want to offer how much to this person? And it's like, I'll go in and put an offer in, and I know the material's good. And if they read the material and they like it, then we can negotiate and find a common ground. So I think that's an important thing. Early on, I feel like I could have gotten some stronger cast, some bigger cast maybe for some of my projects. And I just kind of learned to go in and, kind of shoot high. I mean, that, again, that doesn't mean you're going to get, Robert Downey Jr. or Chris Hemsworth or,
right.
Any of the Avengers for that matter to do your movie. But like, there are people out there, I mean, that are looking for work, especially in their, middle age and people who are working on TV, making a lot of money. They just want to sink into a role. They don't need the money. They'll do a cheaper, a project, a lower budget project for less money because it's good. So
yeah, which is always so gratifying to see big stars in smaller movies, and they're not doing it for the money. They're either doing it for the opportunity to flex different things on screen, that sides of their acting ability that nobody's been given them the chance to do before, or they just, love to do good work. Yeah, it's definitely something I think people should keep in mind more, for sure. Were there any good books on filmmaking or any elements of producing that were notable for you?
Trying to think what books, I read back when. I mean, Robert McKee's, everybody says that, but I'm trying to think if there were any other books that I sort of read. Nothing is popping out at me.
School of Hard Knocks. No, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff, and I'm sure I read stuff. I'm sure I was assigned reading and stuff in grad school, but nothing really that I can remember stood out other than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, I mean, look, honestly, read scripts. If you're a producer, read scripts. Look at what is trending right now. What movies are getting picked up, what are doing well in the box office, that studios are putting out, what's doing well on VOD, especially in the genre world, what movies are premiering at Fantasia, Fantastic Fest, Midnight Madness, what are they, monster movies, are they zombie movies, are they vampire movies, are they home invasion, are they thrillers, like what are they, and figure out what's sort of trending, what's working, and and develop projects that way, in terms of I mean, I know that's not really the question you were asking in terms of
no, that's plenty. I feel like it's a better answer than I was even looking for with that question. Yeah, that's great. Well, DJ, this was a whole lot of fun. I'm glad we finally got to sit down. Before we part, any parting wisdom for those aspiring producers out there?
I think, just make it happen. I mean, I think like kind of what you said early on, especially now, back in the 70s and the 80s, you come out of film school, have a decent short, get an opportunity to, direct a film. And then it's like, oh, I came out of USC and here's my producer and he's going to produce this studio movie with me. And you just kind of walked into a job. And now you really have to make it happen for yourself, and you can make a movie, get into a festival, and then you're kind of on your way. If it works out that way, or, if you make a movie or two and they do well for a distributor and they know you can deliver and you give them what you say you're going to give them, they'll keep financing your films. You still have to put in the hard work and the legwork in packaging it and that sort of thing, but you can keep going back to these people once you sort of build these relationships and show them that, the film that you pitched is the film that you made and they made money on it. And okay, what else do you have? Let's do another one. And it happened to me, I can say from experience, I have people coming back to me, asking me what else I have, what I'm working on. Like, people want more content. But you gotta go out and figure it out, and make it to get started. I feel like. Yeah,
I feel like that's huge. And I feel like big parts of being a successful producer who gets multiple projects is being enjoyable to be around, being reliable, and obviously having good taste. It seems like those are big elements of it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. I mean, I think, obviously taste is subjective and whatnot, but I think it's partially, aligning yourself with good potential partners, finding, I watch movies and then I'll reach out to like, okay, this director, I really like this film that I saw on Shudder or whatever. And I reach out to the director and ask him what else he's got. And then we're developing another project. Could be even as simple as that, this guy has another script or whatever. But yeah, I agree. It's like, it's hard. It can be hard. It's a stressful, it is hard. It's a stressful, job. It's a stressful business, but, I think, and one thing, not being in LA, it's like, I don't feel like I have that LA mentality. I just try to be like another guy, and I think, I just be, who I try to be who I am in terms of that. And, I think that helps. I agree. I think, I'm just rambling now, but being enjoyable to be around and
not having an LA personality probably goes a really long way.
I don't want to go that far necessarily. I might piss off some people, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But yeah, you know, in terms of, it's just different. You know, we all know. You in LA, you know, it's different.
Yeah, I feel like being an honest person is really helpful, and because there's not a lot of them.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I've been burned on a lot of different projects by a lot of different people, a lot of different ways, you know, and that's another kind of maybe another piece of parting wisdom I would give is just, you know, don't be paranoid, but like make sure you watch your back, because people don't have your best interests in mind. They have their own, you know, for the most part. And, you know, it's tough when bad stuff happens to you, but it's a lesson learned. And, I've learned mine a few times. But, you know, I try to, you know, hopefully it makes me a better person at the end of the day. Like I try to help people more so than, you know, more so than not, obviously. And, you know.
No, makes a lot of sense. Well, on that note, DJ, real pleasure. Thank you again.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. It's always great talking.
All right. Here, as always, are some key takeaways from this conversation with DJ. Number 1, overshoot with casting. When casting a movie, DJ always aims for the moon and attempts to cast actors who are way outside of the project's league. Though he doesn't always get them, sometimes he does. For this reason, DJ prefers to avoid casting directors, citing that many of them are too cautious and quote-unquote realistic. DJ has no problem reaching out to megawatt celebrities himself, and as a result, has had many pleasant surprises, leading him to have worked with a number of major actors, including Ethan Hawke, John Cusack, John Malkovich, David Spade, Emile Hirsch, Jessica Lange, Shirley MacLaine, Demi Moore, Bruce Dern, multiple times, James Earl Jones, Sharon Stone, Jeremy Piven, Courteney Cox, Christina Ricci, Mira Sorvino, Selma Blair, Taye Diggs, and George Lopez, to name a few. P.S. If you are looking for a casting agent who's not afraid to shoot for the moon with you, reach out to David Guglielmo at Blood Oath. That's David Guglielmo, Guglielmo. Number 2, producers solve problems. A lot of people ask what a producer does, and in addition to the myriad of responsibilities, they basically oversee the big picture of the project and bring all the many pieces together while ensuring everything moves forward on time and on budget. All of that, and they solve problems. DJ tells many stories about how producers need to be the ones who solve problems as they arise on set. This ability to think on your feet is critical to producing, as problems will inevitably arise on set, and you'll need a sense of cunning ingenuity to solve and push through them. For more on this topic, check out the life stories of both Jerry Weintraub and Shep Gordon. Both of these guys have wonderful documentaries about them and autobiographies written about them. I recommend reading and watching both, as they're masterclasses in producing. And I actually had Shep Gordon on this very show and highly recommend that episode. Number 3, this is a big one. Don't wait to be discovered. Bang on doors. A lot of would-be producers and filmmakers wait to be discovered. This is waiting in vain. At the beginning of his career, DJ spent all of his free time hustling, from cold emailing producers, packaging hypothetical projects together, building his network, and pitching his ass off all the time. The game of numbers ultimately worked in his favor, and he got his foot in the door, and after fortifying his mettle on multiple movies, he's since produced over 20 projects. This is really a testament to the importance of never not seeking out and actively pushing opportunities forward. Nobody's going to hand it to you. You have to go get it, and you have to push, and you have to knock on doors. Had DJ waited to be discovered, there's a good chance he'd still be waiting. Instead, he made his own opportunities and never backed down. Go look at his IMDb profile. There's a lot of movies there. That's a guy who never stops and never quits, and I was very inspired by that. Anyway, guys, thank you as always for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your friends and family on social media? Don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at I'm Nick Taylor. That's I am Nick Taylor, and on Twitter at the same handle. Thanks again for listening to the Nick Taylor Horror Show.